we cut to Fred and Serena, who have their triumphant reunion after the realization that Serena is preggo.
Oh, he is full of poetry, isn't he? And Serena is all about disappointing the shit out of him, and I love it. It's so
that
fantastic.
was my favorite line of hers. This was so funny. Every time I've rewatched this episode, it makes me laugh. Just back off, Fred.
It's hysterical. You have tasted that the Lord is gracious. Back off, Fred. Really? Serena is very clearly telling him, nothing has changed. Get over yourself. And Fred's like, everything has changed. The world has tilted on its axis. He, big man, wants us to be together. How could you refuse me, baby? Come on.
I mean, how shall I refuse thee? Let me count the ways.
Right?
Misogyny, chauvinism, forced rape. I shall not continue to count. I do love that Serena makes a good sporting effort here. She really does. Like when Fred starts waxing poetic about scripture, and she says it's not your place to guess the intentions of God. What a beautiful, biting and scathing sentiment to deliver to a man who specializes in waxing poetic about scripture and utilizing scripture to further his agenda.
Yep. And it is actual scripture that she's saying right back to him, because this is basically the same thing that June says to her on the front porch of the house when she's in false labor. I can't remember which one it is, but it's basically no one knows the will of God, or no one knows, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah,
that thing.
I was thinking the same thing, yep.
She wants him to tone down his arrogance. Mm-hmm. Like that would ever happen.
Right. Of course it wouldn't. And I'm sort of glad that he didn't tone down his arrogance, if we're to be entirely frank, because when he goes on to continue about the pregnancy, he refers to it as our pregnancy. And Serena quickly corrects him to say, my pregnancy, which, quick aside, Serena, interesting choice of words here. You haven't considered any other pregnancy within Gilead to be a pregnancy that has belonged to only the mother, but we'll leave that be. I kind of feel like that's a softball that they're lobbing to us.
Yeah. I thought it was hilarious because she puts the emphasis on the my part. They're all your pregnancies, Serena, as far as you're concerned. And I'm also like, oh, look at this little miss, all my body, my choice, my pregnancy. You don't have control over me, man.
Right.
Oh, shut up, Serena.
Oh, well, I mean, Fred calls her out on it. He says
he does.
Pregnancy is as much yours as, what does he say? What is it?
This pregnancy belongs to me just so much as Fred's belonged to you.
Said without a hint of irony.
I
know. What's wild, though, is that he's wrong when he says this. This pregnancy belongs to me just so much as Fred's belongs to you. Serena has no biological imperative or connection to Fred's pregnancy. So in actuality, Fred has more of a connection to Serena's pregnancy.
But not really, though, because it's still her pregnancy, not his.
Agreed entirely. It still is ultimate. It's a 51-49% discussion here. It will still always be Serena's choice because it's always still the mother's choice. But holy Fred, that was such without a drop of irony, without a hint of hesitation. This pregnancy belongs as much to me. It belongs to me just so much as Fred's belong to you. It was he immediately understood exactly how what Fred's pregnancy was and is.
Yeah.
Well, he understands what it was and is, or was to Serena.
To Serena.
And because that's the only thing that matters here.
Right. It's someone else standing outside some pregnant person and being like, that's my pregnancy. And it's that's exactly what Serena did to June. She got in bed with her and stroked her pregnancy. And then Fred's standing right there and she's like, this is my pregnancy. And he's like, that's not how it was when you were having false labor pains up in your pretty nightgown. Like he's like, at least Fred's not delusional about it. Fred's smarter in terms of he knows Gilead's bullshit and he knows how to pretend it's not bullshit. Like he knows how to turn that spin and that marketing machine on. But Serena is like lost in the delusion of like she doesn't even know what the truth is anymore. You know what I mean? Whereas like he at least can see it most of the time. Although he annoys me later, but I guess it's still Fred being smart about the way he speaks, but we'll get there.
I mean, he does lay out some logic for her here when he gets into the changing of their legal landscape. Because June, who he still calls Alfred, could put them both away for a long time, and then Serena won't get to be a mother to her child at all.
That's the thing. When he calls her Alfred, that's what drives me crazy. I'm like, is he seriously calling her Alfred still? Like she's in Canada. So I'm assuming they're going to have some kind of at least showdown in court, maybe not face to face, but within the legal system. And you're going to tell me you're going to call her Alfred. You better get used to calling her June real quick. Yeah, but yeah, I can see how that would be Fred's goal to begin with, is to double down on this is his quote unquote culture.
Exactly. Maintain the facade, double down on the culture, and continue to call her Alfred because it is a role that she, quote unquote, prescribed to voluntarily with all of the quotes. And you like for Fred's defense, he needs to maintain that she voluntarily prescribed to this mentality and prescribed to this position.
How are you going to maintain that when she's there saying she didn't? That's my question. I'm just curious about.
Of course,
I don't understand. How you dispute that? No, it wasn't voluntary. Okay.
One absolutely cannot. Absolutely cannot. I'm just saying, like, for Fred, like, in his tenuous defense, like, that's the only thing that he has to hold on to is that, like, she, like, that Alfred was there as a servant of Gilead voluntarily. I'm not saying that she was there. Like, I'm not saying that like, that's actually what she was. I'm saying in Fred's dilapidated mentality, that's how he views her.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I don't know if it makes sense, but I think it's all that we have to go on at this juncture. Anyway, so ultimately we have this showdown between Fred and Serena, and Fred says with Alfred, fittingly enough, now in Canada, that we need to drop our fight and team up to help each other. Serena scoffs at the team up notion, which, like, can you blame her?
No.
And Fred has an interesting change of heart here. He's like, I will recant my testimony against you. I'll make sure to do everything I can to ensure a good life for our son. What did you two think about this?
I think he's going to, if that's what he's saying, I'm going to ensure a good life for our son. I'm sure that he's painting it as in, I'm going to provide for you and our son, but I just wonder if he's going to end up eventually throwing Serena under the bus again and then somehow lay claim to custody on that child. So I was wondering about that. What happens to this kid? Is it a Canadian foster care thing? Insta adoption? Do we get a, hey, Rita, I know we've had our differences in the past, but do you think you could watch our kid until he turns 18? Like, I don't know. Just what happens in this?
No. I don't know. I have no idea what happens if they stay locked up or whatever. I just know that if they go back to Gilead, that's my assumption that that's Fred's goal, right? Like he's going to try to use this. But although I think he might be kind of pitching it to Serena as, hey, you can stay in Canada and raise this kid. But I just think that if he does end up, like, if his goal is to go back to Canada, to go back to Gilead with Serena and family, I think it's kind of stupid because I feel like a lot of Gilead is going to be like, what the you idiot? Like, how did you get yourself locked up in Canada, you moron? What were you doing with your wife traveling up to Canada? Because that wasn't good. But whatever, who cares what happens to Fred when he comes back to Gilead? I guess my point is I don't think that he would try to turn on Serena more because I just don't think he really wants to raise this kid. Like this is everything he's wanted. He wants his ticket back to Gilead, back to power, back to everything he loves. And also here, Serena, have that baby you wanted so bad and leave me alone.
But that kid is a status symbol for him. And if he ends up back in Gilead, he takes the kid back and goes back to Gilead without her, he can just go get a fancy new wife. And it's not like he's ever going to have a hand in raising that kid anyway. We know that from the testaments.
Yeah, but
That's
I
a very
think
good point.
he'd be much more apt to keep Serena close by. That's his favorite thing to do, is have her as his own, right? To possess her. That's the thing we see from Fred over and over again, is he really loves to be in control of her. And so he's not just going to ditch her and get an Esther. He doesn't want someone else. He wants Serena, and he wants to control her. I'm not saying he wouldn't make her life absolutely miserable. I think he probably will. But I'm kind of there for it a little bit, because I like watching the two of them make each other miserable.
That's a good point.